Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, there is, about 6 hours? No, 8 hours to go till the football game. Time zones.
You are asking the wrong
zones,
guy.
Man. 8 hours to go till the football game. About, 3.5 hours till we have to get on the media shuttle. We still have a roommate sleeping upstairs, so I have not
Don't
showered
sell him
yet.
out like that.
We have not. I didn't say who. I didn't want to shower, so we're going to need to. It's important to not smell like a petting zoo in a professional setting. So we'll shower and stuff. So, but we have some extended period. It's like my big takeaway here to really explore the space. We still have 15 listener questions we need to get to. We still have a bold prediction show we need to get to. We still, I'm sure, going to have a bunch of questions in the chat here.
Yeah.
So go ahead and hit the thumbs up. Start throwing those super chats in there. We will start getting to those as we get through the show.
Yeah, I'm guessing about the only way we're going to get to some of these questions is if they are super chats because of the listener questions and the bold predictions that we've got to get to. But first, we want to get to our sponsor, which is Grateful Griddle. Buckeye fans, Grateful Griddle is here to take your events to the next level, whether it's a wedding, corporate event, or birthday party. Their Columbus food truck catering serves up mouth-watering smash burgers, customizable menus, and unbeatable service. Head to gratefulgriddleoh.com and let them handle the flavor while you enjoy the fun. Smash burgers for all is always a good thing.
Yes, 100%. I could go for a smash burger. I should eat lunch before we leave, too, because it's going to be a long day.
Yes.
Yeah, so we will have to eventually get off the show. But an hour, we'll see. The more people who are on here, the longer we'll probably go. So share the link, encourage your friends to join, yada, yada.
But also realize we eventually do have to go.
Yes, we do have to leave here. Leaving the hotel is an important part of covering the football game, as it turns out.
So Tom, go ahead.
Do we want to start with questions? Do we want to start with bold predictions? What do we want to do?
Well, let me ask you, do we want to start with bold predictions or do we want to finish up some listener questions? Do we want to intersperse?
Let's do the listener questions first. We're all about
lightning
audience,
round it.
We're all about audience service here.
Yes.
So let's get through these. First one from @Shadrack_Bell. What will result in the biggest impact on the game? The Ohio State offensive line versus the Texas defensive line, or the Ohio State receivers versus the Texas defensive backs?
Well, I think if the Ohio State offensive line wins their battle, then the Ohio State receivers are going to win their battles. So I think it's kind of all starts up front with that. And if the Texas defensive line isn't getting to Will Howard, then he'll have time to, even if it's just dumping it down, he's okay taking a profit, not worrying necessarily about the deep shots. I'm interested to see how many deep shots they can even dial up in this game based on what Texas is trying to do to keep them away. But if you're asking me which one if I'm Ohio State, which one do I want to win? It's that first one.
Yeah, if you don't win the offensive line, it's going to be hard to win the wide receiver battle. And yeah, I think that's a pretty easy one. I think in terms of deep shots, I don't know how many deep shots you're going to see Ohio State take today. Maybe they can. And they certainly do have concepts that can attack the kind of three high defense that Texas likes to run. But I do think Texas is going to do what they can to keep stuff in front of them, make Ohio State kind of go down the field methodically. So I don't know that this is going to be the bombs away Ted Ginn in the 2006 Fiesta Bowl against Notre Dame kind of game, or even the Jeremiah Smith long touchdown against Oregon or long touchdowns against Tennessee kind of thing. But you've seen they can score even without throwing the ball downfield. The first Jeremiah Smith touchdown, I think, was thrown behind the line of scrimmage. So you don't have to throw the ball downfield to have it turn into big plays. But I think you're going to be wanting them to throw the ball down the field more than they probably will throw the ball down the field tonight. And I think a lot of that's a function of what the Texas defense is going to try and take away from them.
Texas has given up just one completion of 50 yards or more this season, so it's not something they typically do.
Is that a stat that you know because of a segment that's coming up later on the show?
Oh, it might be.
Oh.
Please don't take it. I only have so many.
Next one is from @BuckeyeAM. I feel that protecting Will Howard in the pocket is perhaps the biggest factor in Friday's game. How clean do you think the offensive line will keep the pocket against this very good Texas defense?
Did I see Joey Kaufman tweet out that Will Howard hasn't been sacked in 5 games, which I thought, well, that's a kiss of death.
Wasn't he sacked against Oregon?
I thought he was sacked once,
he was sacked.
If there was only a way to look up these stats.
Yeah, he was sacked against. I'm almost positive that Oregon got him once relatively early in the game, and then
he got back to the line of scrimmage on one of them.
Did he? Okay, so it might be a.
Right.
The most technical, he was sacked, but got face masked against Tennessee.
Yes.
So.
Well, and the thing is, when going into that Tennessee game, we said if they protect him, Tennessee is going to get thrown all over.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Oregon. It's like that's so much of the key because of how good this passing game is, that if he is clean, then really how are you going to beat Ohio State? Because they've shown they don't need to run the ball necessarily to win it. But how clean do we think they'll be? I mean, Texas has some really good defensive ends. They've got some solid defensive tackles. We know if they can contain Colin Simmons, then that's so much of their pass rush as it is. And if they can limit him, then I like Ohio State's chances even more. If they can't, then if they can't control the Texas pass rush, then it becomes anybody's game. If they can, then it's Ohio State's game.
Yeah, that's probably right. And Ohio State, we've not seen them throw as many screens as Texas does. Texas's offense is very, very screen heavy. You know what's in there, so that there are probably ways to neutralize the pass rush other than just having blocking them up. But yeah, it feels like Texas is probably going to have to lean real heavily on that. I don't know how heavily Ohio State's going to want to do that, or how heavily Ohio State feels like they need to do that. I mean, the offensive line has been better than expected in a lot of these categories recently. So next one, this is one I'm going to handle. This one, this is from my buddy Michael, who is a photographer out here with us, and he put this. We were riding the bus back from the stadium after the post-game press conference or the pregame press conference yesterday. He said, "Should selfie sticks be banned from the mosh pit?" So let me translate. I think everyone knows what a selfie stick is, but he's asking because we are photographers. We're up on the risers, sort of back, and trying to get pictures of people. And I was, we were all complaining to each other about people who were holding up selfie sticks and tripods and stuff down in the area right underneath the stage, right in front of the stage, so that we have these nice pictures. And it's like, hey, here's Ryan Day holding up a trophy, and here's a tripod with a camera directly in the middle of his chest. And it's like, well, there's nothing I can do about that, but it is a little annoying. So yes, the answer is yes, they should be. Will they be? Probably not.
Well,
but they should be.
And I was at the Rose Bowl. I was outside of the mosh pit, but also down on the field, and had my phone on my tripod, and I was escorted off the field because I didn't have the proper vest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, somebody next to me, one Pat Murphy from Bucknuts, did not also have the vest, but he was not escorted out. And I, a good citizen, did not totally narc on him like I could have.
That's a lot more likable than you. That's probably why he got away with it.
Security doesn't know that, though.
Oh, you can tell.
Oh, you can. Look at his eyes.
Some W. Reese 27 says, what would be better for Ohio State, Texas to play man or zone? So the reality of the situation is that Texas is a very zone-heavy team. I think I heard something like 80% of snaps that they're in zone. So if they're in man, that means they're not able to do what they would normally want to do. So even taking everything else out of the picture, you want the opponent to not be able to do what they want to do. So there are man beater concepts, there are zone beater concepts. It's, if you know what the opponent's going to be in, you can call stuff that will take advantage of that. So the opponent has to mix things up. But if you spent your whole season playing zone, you probably want to continue playing zone, be able to continue doing the things you've been able to do. Problem is, Texas is able to play zone because they play a bunch of crappy passing attacks this year. We talked about this earlier in the week. The best yards per attempt passing attacks that Texas played this year are Florida, who in the game against Texas was playing its third-string quarterback, so it does not apply. Arkansas, which is a run-first team, and Vanderbilt, which is a run-first team. So they have really just not played a great passing attack. And even the talented teams where Georgia, for example, Georgia doesn't have any wide receivers this year. Not a person in that wide receiver room that can catch a football this year. So that's one of the reasons that Georgia will be watching this game on TV instead of or watching last night's game, I guess, on TV. I get to watch both games on TV, as a matter of fact. But I think the short answer here is it would be better for Ohio State or for Texas if Texas was forced to play man. there are plenty of concepts. I talked to Ross Fulton on last night's live show, and you should absolutely go watch that after this because Ross does an amazing job. And when I sound smart talking about football, it's just because I talked to Ross before I talked to you guys. So he talked about how Texas loves to be in that like 3 high where you have 1 high safety and your two corners are deep. And, so you got your 3 high sort of base of that defense. There are always concepts that can beat that, right? He talked about like the sail concept that Ryan Day has, where one guy kind of runs like an out, and then the other guy runs an up, and you can create all sorts of very predictable one-on-one matchups if you know the opponent's going to be in that. So Texas is not going to be Pete Kwiatkowski's not going to just be able to sit in like, well, I'm just going to call the same defense over and over again. It's going to work over and over again, but if you see Texas in man, that is probably not great news for Texas.
Yeah, and it would be a complete sea change in what they normally would like to do. And so if they're doing that, then it's like, well, why? What has Ohio State done to make that happen? And how out of sorts would they be doing it? So I think you're going to see the numbers will remain this similar. It's just when do you implement what you do? And you change it up a little bit and try not to let Ohio State know when it's going to happen, but maybe you can catch them off guard by playing a little bit of man when Will Howard is expecting some zone. Yeah. And that's where you can get some success maybe.
Well, and you can also play zone with, put 2 high, but 4 high. I mean, you can mix it up where, hey, it's 3 high, there's a guy in the middle of the field, so the middle of the field is not open. Okay, well, then if you're in 2 high, the middle field probably is open. So then it changes where you can throw the ball, and you can adapt your routes to a certain degree, but not necessarily in the middle of the play all the time. We have a super chat from Jordan Kapler that's going to cut the line here. Hang on, I gotta find it. I thought I could punch it up from the top. I could not. He says, "Consider this my application to be the selfie stick enforcement officer. We must protect Tom, the most important member of Buckeye Huddle, at all costs. Tony, 2025, the best year ever."
Ow.
He's not that worried because you're not that important. It's fine. You can try and go for sympathy, but
I mean, this is going to take a while for me to. This has been like 3 or 4 years on Jordan's good side, and now it's like I'm not even necessarily on his bad side. I'm just no longer on the great side.
I think we need to get a Jordan Kapler power ranking at some point to figure out where everyone stands right now. We know who's number 1, but we've known that for years. He's just finally come around to it. So appreciate Jordan, greatly appreciate. Never more appreciated in a super chat.
I feel like Jordan has gotten weak. Woke Jordan.
Let's not do that. All right, next one from MChadC47. Ohio State wins if fill in the blank wins their one-on-one matchup.
Well, can we go back to the Jack Sawyer versus
Cameron Williams?
Or no, in terms of like the Oregon or the
yeah. So
what was it? No, it was Tennessee, right?
Tennessee was.
Come on, you got it.
Johnny Cornelius was Oregon.
Yes.
John Campbell was Tennessee.
There you go.
And now the question is Cameron Williams, the right tackle for Texas. If he wins his one-on-one matchup, if Tyleik Williams wins his one-on-one matchup, if you can win up front, I think the answer to this is someone on the Ohio State offensive line or someone on the Ohio State defensive line. And I would be perfectly fine with someone saying Josh Fryer wins his one-on-one matchup.
That's a good one.
Pick one of the tackles or one of the defensive ends, and that's probably going to be your answer. Tyleik Williams, though, we spent so much time talking about JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer and how productive they've been, and they have been wildly productive this offseason or this postseason. Tyleik Williams, I think, has gone a little bit under the radar exactly how disruptive he's been in the middle of that defensive line. Like, you go back and watch that Oregon game, and it's like he didn't have 11 tackles or 12 tackles or whatever it was that Cody Simon had, but, man, he was in the middle of just he was making Dylan Gabriel have a not good time at all.
Well, and I think he's going to be very involved in this run defense for Ohio State and disrupting some of these long stretch runs that Texas has and just immediately kind of ruining the timing of it. And so, yeah, I'm with you. I was writing about this game and writing a little bit about him for today as well, and I expect him to be very involved. And he is an impactful player. He's not always been healthy this season, but right now, again, you're facing your last game as a Buckeye. So you're going to give it everything you've got, and I would expect nothing less from him, who he has the opportunity. He can be the most disruptive guy in this game, frankly.
Yeah. The next one is an interesting one, and it was about how the Texas counterparts, the Texas media folks, are feeling about this game. That was from @Brent331.
I've not really talked with any of them, but I my first morning here, I did hear one of them saying that, Texas hasn't played their best game yet. It's time for, maybe they'll do it in this game. And my thinking is, you should not expect to play your best game against by far your best opponent. This is not, there's procrastination, and then there is expecting the impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And Texas can certainly play a very good game. I would expect their best game against Ohio State. So that's really, have you talked with?
There's some guys on the bus. There was a little bit of chatter yesterday, and I think the view of this is broadly similar to what Ohio State fans are thinking. Now, I see Mika picking Ohio State to win 45-14. I don't think that's the view of the Texas folks, but it's hard to look at the Final Four in this playoff and think that anyone other than Ohio State has the most talent on the team or is playing the best football right now. So, I think the Texas folks think Texas has a chance, and they absolutely do. I think I would strongly agree with. Yeah, Texas has a chance. There's a way Texas wins this game. But if I think there's certain specific stuff that Ohio State does well that is not a great matchup for Texas. And this is I'm going to smoothly transition into this super chat from Sean, who says, "I can't get rid of this nagging feeling that OSU comes out flat. Please talk me off my cliff of irrationality." Even if Ohio State comes out flat, there's a lot that the Ohio State defense does that's going to make life very difficult for Texas, where they've got one of the best run defenses in the country, and Texas has really struggled to run the ball against good defenses. So, okay, how are they going to be able to throw the ball? Well, a lot of the stuff that Ohio State does, and a lot of the stuff that Ohio State does in terms of not only scheme, but also in terms of diversity of scheme, mixing up coverages, all that kind of stuff. Again, this is all stuff going back to my conversation with Ross Fulton on the live show last night. Ohio State, I think he said there was a stat that they were something like 7th in the country in the most diversity of coverages. And that's something that Quinn Ewers sometimes struggles to recognize, different coverages. And if you can make Quinn Ewers hold the ball and have to figure out what's going on, that gives your pass rush more time to get home. All of that potentially plays towards Ohio State's favor. Texas can absolutely win this game. This is not Ohio State Akron. This is not Ohio State Western Michigan. This is
still a 5-point game, right? Or 5.5 or 6?
Yes, I have not seen an updated. I have not seen an updated line, but I think it's still in the neighborhood of a touchdown, give or take. But this is a game where Ohio State has some advantages, and again, Texas has not played an offense that can throw the ball like Ohio State has. Ohio State has played several very good defenses. Texas is a great defense. Oregon was a good defense. Tennessee was a great defense. Michigan was a great defense. Penn State was a great defense. Ohio State has played Indiana was a pretty darn good defense. Ohio State's half of Ohio State's schedule has been, boy, this team's got a pretty good defense. So this is not a new thing for Ohio State. And outside of Michigan, they've been successful against everyone this year. Texas, again, I'm going to repeat the thing from earlier, Florida playing its third-string quarterback, Arkansas, and Vanderbilt. Those are the three best passing attacks that Texas has faced statistically this year. And those three things are not the same as Ohio State.
And we saw both Clemson and Arizona State throw for 300 yards against Texas. So those they do not have Ohio State's passing game or receivers. So I do think there's a possibility that Texas starts fast. They've done that in both of their playoff games, and then they come back to earth, or they allow the opponent to come back to them in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter. And we know Ohio State's a third quarter team all year long. So if Texas gets out to a fast start, that doesn't necessarily mean Ohio State starts out slowly. That's more just a Texas thing, in which could certainly happen. But the way Ohio State's been starting fast as well, it wouldn't shock me if this is 7-7 after the first quarter.
No, not at all. And if it's 7-7 after the first quarter, that's not necessarily a bad thing for Ohio State, because there's been a lot of conversation about how Steve Sarkisian and scripting plays and how they script the first couple of drives and how they've got lots of creative stuff, but then they, as you've said, kind of tend to bog down. And a lot of that is, okay, once you get off the script, then you got to sort of adapt the stuff. And that's somewhere where he maybe isn't quite as strong as with the scripting. So if Ohio State survives the scripting and tied or ahead or down by a field goal or something like that, that's probably not a bad thing. I would not be ready to jump off the roof if they're down 10-7 after a quarter. That's not necessarily a terrible thing at all. You're not going to be up 34-0 on everyone in the middle of the second quarter in the playoff. That's just not like that. That's not a reasonable expectation. Something that is very reasonable here, Tony. The Jordan Kapler current Buckeye Huddle Power Rankings: 1A Tom, obviously; 1B Tony. That's fair. Number 31 Kevin. Now, we're doing listener questions. I have all these questions in there. I do want to kind of leave this up here for the rest of the show. Maybe we'll come back to it. I'll start. Maybe we'll come back to it later. I'm not sure. Here's a super chat from the Chickens. Finally joined the site. That site being BuckeyeHuddle.com. Wonder if you could buy me a spicy McChicken to say thank you. Mark told me it's okay.
Where are these spicy McChickens?
I don't know. I have no idea. I assume McDonald's, but beyond that,
I've not seen or heard tell of these things, but not a bad idea.
Where were we? That there was a McDonald's that was like a completely blank sign. It was like just the golden arches, and it was. We were wondering if it was actually a McDowell's in the wild. I'm not sure. Here's the next one from Gamification. Health of the Texas offensive line.
Not great. I mean,
yeah, not 100%.
Okay, but not 100%. You know, I don't know. Overall, would you say as a whole, 75, 80%? I mean, when you figure in like what is Cameron Williams? He's been cleared. So does that mean he's 65? Is he 75% what he would normally be in September? You know, what is anybody right now, as they say, compared to what they would be in September? We know Calvin Banks has dealt with injuries. Jake Majors, Calvin Banks, their left tackle. Jake Majors, their center, has missed a game. So, like, these guys are all banged up. They're all wearing knee braces, you know, from day one. So, like, they can handle some of these nicks and bruises. But, you know, the key for me, I think one of the things is, they're banged up, and they're playing. They're good to go. How are they going to play every snap? Will there be instances where somebody has to go in, and now Trevor Gooseby has to come in? He's played left tackle and right tackle for both of those guys. So, like, at least they have that experienced third tackle that can come in. But can they play the entire game? I don't know.
And Trevor Gooseby, when he's come in, has been, like, great. You see him come in, they show him, and they go, oh, Gooseby's in now for whoever's hurt. And he played, as you said, both left tackle again in the SEC championship game and then right tackle in the second half against Clemson and the whole Arizona State game. And you see him come on, and they show him, and they put up his name and his major and all that kind of stuff. And that's the last time you hear about him, because he's been completely fine. So, if they do have a tackle go down, Banks is, a future top 10, top 15 kind of NFL draft pick. So you don't want to lose him. But if they do lose him, it's not, this is not like going off a cliff like, the Ohio State left tackle situation did when Josh Simmons went down, and you had the Nebraska game, and they have now figured out the solution there. Texas has a solution waiting in the wings, even if one of those guys does end up getting sort of banged up. But I think the Texas offensive line is banged up, but not to a point where it should completely short circuit the game. They'll be probably okay. If they're not, they're not, and we'll see. I will amend my prediction as needed. Mid-game, yes. At DMC 200-802 says, surprised I haven't heard anyone talk about how the Buckeyes have rolled up two really good teams with exactly 0 big players from special teams and 0 turnovers forced. Can they get one or both Friday? If so, they will go from light speed directly to ludicrous speed.
Hey, ludicrous speed is nothing to joke about. It is interesting that they're doing this just by like fair play, and no advantageous bounces or anything. It's just design, talent, scheme, and execution. And so then what happens if things go poorly for Texas in terms of turnovers or field position? Because it's turnovers and field position is what cost them against Michigan. Mm-hmm. When they've not had those issues, you've seen what they've done. Now, I don't know that you can. I don't think you go into a game ever counting on. Well, we'll get a couple turnovers somehow.
Right. Yeah.
Now, with Quinn Ewers, you have to catch the balls that he throws to the defense. And if you do, then things are going to go great. If you don't, then you're putting yourself at risk for making this game closer and more of a pain than it needs to be. Just if the defense makes the plays that are available to them, I think they'll be okay. But you have to do it.
And, you go back to the Rose Bowl, and, it was 34-0 Ohio State in the second quarter, but it literally could have been worse than that because there were Caleb Downs had a couple interceptions that he got his hands on, not easy plays. It was not like, he dropped the ball. It was, this was a play he potentially could have made, but it would have been very challenging that he got his hands on. Cody Simon had what could have been a pick six on a fourth down play.
Legitimately, 5 interceptions with, that could have happened. Jack Sawyer had one that hit his hands several times. There were many opportunities for some interceptions in that one.
And JT Tuimoloau hit Dylan Gabriel's arm coming off the edge, and the ball popped straight up in the air, and an offensive lineman caught it, but could have been a fumble there. I mean, I don't think I'm necessarily expecting a big play in special teams. Texas's return game has been very good. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown in the Peach Bowl. They've had some big punt returns. So I think you're more likely to see a big play on special teams out of Texas. But the Ohio State defense, I think it would be a little surprising if the Ohio State defense did not force a turnover for the third straight game, just because they're doing the stuff in terms of getting pressure that leads to turnovers. They've got the talented guys in the back end of that defense. It feels like one is probably coming. Here's a super chat from Ryan Dawes. Over under 9 sacks by Ohio State. I know they got 8 in the Rose Bowl, but this is context free. This should be the easiest. 100% of people should be saying under 9. I mean, what would you set an over-under number on sacks for Ohio State today? Because they got 6 against Tennessee? Did they?
I don't remember. With 5 or 6 against Tennessee, 8 against Oregon.
Yeah.
Now, in Texas's postseason games, including Georgia, they gave 6 to Georgia, and then 5 total in the playoffs. So they've given up 11 in their 3 postseason games. So you say 4, I think, is a big number to set. Especially against some quality offensive linemen. And again, I don't know, has Texas even had their full starting 5 in any of their postseason games?
I think they had their full starting 5 in the first half of the Clemson game.
So,
and they were up 24-7 at that point. And then it was Powers and now I'm thinking John Campbell. That was Tennessee. Powers and
Majors
Majors and the center
Cameron Williams
and the right tackle Cameron Williams. Thank you. Both went down in the span of a play or something that. And and then they bogged down a little bit the second half. But when they had the 5 guys together, it was that was a pretty solid performance. But Clemson was 99th in the country in yards per carry allowed. So how much credit do you want to give? How much credit, brackets complimentary, do you want to give the Texas offensive line, and how much brackets derogatory do you want to give the Clemson defense?
Give me a score if Ohio State does have 9 sacks in this game. It was 41-10 or something.
Ohio State $ Texas -6. That was my score prediction last night for the Orange Bowl champion against whoever wins this game. That offense, that offense last night was extremely gross for quite a while. So this is a smooth transition here from at Ohio State of Mind. Which team has the advantage in the line of scrimmage? Texas media seems to think that they do.
To me, I think you have to go with Ohio State because, one, they have the healthiest offensive line, even though they're down 2 starters, but everybody that's playing now has been playing for a while. They're healthy. They know what they're doing. They've got the rotation that they're accustomed to. The defensive line is all seniors. And so when you look at the Texas defensive line, perhaps their best player is a freshman. So that's a lot to put on that one guy and expect him to perform against also seniors that he's playing against. So I think I'm just trying to think who is the youngest guy in any of this for Ohio State? Austin Searveld, a redshirt freshman who rotates in as a guard. Other than that, Carson Hinsman, redshirt sophomore.
Montgomery, redshirt freshman.
So other than that, it's all seniors and veterans who have been through all of this before, and they've been prepared for this game, been preparing for this game for months based on who they've been playing against, whereas Texas, they've not really had the toughest schedule in building up towards this.
Yeah, they have not played a lot of elite offenses, and they have not played a ton of really elite defenses. I mean, I can pull up the CFP stats on yards per play, but outside of Georgia, who they lost to twice, it just, I don't think they've, let's see, yards per play. Ohio State is number 1 in yards per play nationally. Number 2 is Indiana, who Ohio State has played and scored against. Number 3 is tied for number 2 at 4.28 yards per play. Indiana and Texas. Ole Miss is number 4. I don't think Texas played them. Tennessee's number 5. Ohio State beat them. Notre Dame's number 6. The winner plays them. Number 7 is at Penn State. Ohio State has played them. You got a couple, SMU, which they didn't play. Alabama, Texas didn't play Alabama. Minnesota, South Carolina, Texas didn't play South Carolina. Michigan is 15th. 4.84. So we'll just stop it there. At the top 15, Ohio State has played 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 15, and Texas has played 0. So, this is.
I bet you're right. It's not good for her.
You sort of assume that. Well, they went through a fill-in-the-blank conference schedule.
Yes, of course.
And you say, well, they went through an SEC schedule. Certainly, they must have played some truly elite offenses and defenses. And no, you can sort of skate through a conference, and when was there a lot of people who recognized that when it was Indiana that was sort of getting talked about. You can have the year where you just don't play a lot of these great teams one way or the other, and Texas played Georgia twice. Georgia's a good team, but Georgia did not have an elite offense or defense this year, which is why Georgia is sitting at home right now. So, yeah, that's oh boy. All right. Deep cleansing breath, everyone. From at JGear23, 13-10 ? Seriously, they just beat Oregon, 13-10. So the how did they lose to Michigan and then do that to Oregon? I think is the thrust of this question. And the result of the Oregon game, or the result of the Michigan game, led to a bunch of changes that helped get them to the point where they did what they did against Oregon and what they did against Tennessee. And I think there's sort of broad consensus at this point that Ryan Day is more involved in the passing game than he was during the Michigan game. He had sort of outsourced all that kind of stuff. And you look at the concepts that are getting used in the passing game now, and they're a lot of Ryan Day concepts. And I think in the same way that the loss to Oregon earlier in the year sort of forced some long overdue changes in the defense, where now, it's more of a Jim Knowles defense than it ever was before. It's more of a Ryan Day passing offense than it ever was before. And Ryan Day has his job because Ryan Day is, an offensive whiz, especially in the passing game. And Jim Knowles has his job because he's a defensive whiz. So, those are both positive things that have changed, that have helped. And it's easy to look at the Oregon loss and go, well, how did they lose to Oregon when they did that the second time? It's like, well, it's kind of because they lost to Oregon, and it's kind of because they lost to Michigan. It would be great. Like, it's wonderful to be able to say, well, the best thing is a close win, and you learn your lessons, and you still get your win, but you learn your lessons. No, it's a lot harder to learn from a win than it is from a loss, because if you lose, then everyone has this like existential crisis and does this real deep soul searching, and they strip it all down to the studs and rebuild it from scratch, and you end up with a much better result long term.
We always go back to the 2013 Michigan game where Ohio State gave up 41 points, and Luke Fickell, the defensive coordinator, was very defiant about the defense and said, did we win? Did we win? It's like, yes, you won, but did you see? Did you see? And changes weren't necessarily made. When you lose, you have to really, really reflect. And again, so much of that game was turnovers and field position, but then also I think the pressure and there was some tightening of the Buckeyes in that game, which caused that loss. And of course, I don't think Will Howard was healthy enough to operate at where he needed to be. So just a ton of things that went poorly for Ohio State. Michigan played well and they lost, but then you bounce back and you address what needs to be fixed. And the thing now is you have an opportunity to do that.
Yeah,
and they've done it. And I still the press conference not after the game, but the next time we talked to Ryan Day, which I don't know if it was a week later, when all of the questions like, shouldn't you have done this? Shouldn't you have thrown more? And every question is like, yeah, we should have done that.
Yeah,
we should have done this instead. We didn't do this properly. Like he took ownership of it, and and then has now moved on, and they're playing the way they are. I'm not saying they're playing the way they are because of the loss to Michigan, but it caused some reflection and some accountability, and it's like, well, you can't ever let this happen again. Like when Ohio State lost 31-0 to Clemson in the playoffs in 2016, Urban Meyer's like, this will never happen again, and we're never getting shut out again. And so they brought in Tom Herman
and a young quarterback coach. What was his name?
Tom Herman.
Tom Herman was there.
Ryan Day. I'm sorry. Ryan Day, but he got rid of Ed Warner.
Tom Herman was before
no.
Ed Warner and Tim back then. Yes.
Ryan Day brought in Ryan Day, and here we are.
Ryan Day brought in Ryan Day. We are on one today. All right, so here's one from at Long Drive Larms, not Cotton Bowl specific, but with some familiar names, i.e. Mitchell Melton. Should we be concerned with roster attrition versus transfers in? Is it a net negative or positive? So I think each of these individually, you kind of have to look at it as a one-off because it's individual guys having an opportunity to make whatever is the best decision for them. When you have 30 guys leaving in one offseason, that's when you go, hey, there might be a bigger picture problem here. Mitchell Melton leaving is, well, you're the number 3 or number 4 edge rusher on the 2025 Ohio State team. You could go somewhere where you could be the number 1 or number 2 edge rusher, and you're going to make a whole bunch more at NIL, have more opportunity to put stuff on tape for the NFL, probably get a chance to do more diverse things in terms of pass rushing and playing on the edge, because at Ohio State, he's sort of always been it's 3rd and 8. Here comes Mitchell Melton. Yeah. So you get a chance to do the one thing. If you go somewhere else, then you have an opportunity to do more things. So I don't think that's a big concern at all, just based on the guys who have left. Outside of Melton, virtually everyone else who has left has been like, well, this guy fits the profile of the guy who's been here for 3 years and hasn't really cracked the depth chart and might have someone coming up behind him who's past him. So those you sort of kind of go, yes, that's a person I expected to transfer. Melton wasn't someone who was in that role, but you understand why. And then in terms of the net transfers in and out, I mean, go ahead and write down a list of players who have transferred out from Ohio State and a list of players who have transferred in from Ohio State, and tell me which list is better. I'll start with the transfers in. Caleb Downs, All-American. Seth McLaughlin, Remington Award winner. Julian Sayin, potential quarterback of the future. I mean, like,
throw in Will Howard.
Will Howard, current quarterback of the present. I mean, I don't know how many 4th string running backs and 3rd string offensive linemen you need to add up, how high you need to stack those up before it equals one Caleb Downs, but I think the pile would be pretty high. Yeah,
and with Mitchell Melton, he's going to be a 6th-year senior next year, so you wouldn't necessarily expect to have him back next year in a normal year anyway. But overall, Ohio State's handling the transfers. I mean, look what Georgia's going through right now. Carson Beck, who is supposed to be going off to the NFL, now is like headed to the transfer portal. Their quarterback of the future, Jaden Rashada, hit the portal like 4 days ago, and so they may be starting a true freshman quarterback unless they're bringing somebody in. Mm-hmm. And you've got a program like Miami that's throwing money at any quarterback that can breathe. I mean, look what Florida State has not been able to do without a quarterback. So there are plenty of programs. I mean, Michigan having to pay $10 million for a high school quarterback, basically. So what Ohio State, they're in a rarefied air of relative calm and positivity in terms of the transfer portal market.
And they've brought in, I mean, we didn't even talk about, they brought in tackles. They brought in the top tackle in the portal by some folks' measures. The top tight end in the portal by some folks' measures. They brought in C.J. Donaldson, a veteran running back, to help flesh out that room a little bit. Like this is something that there are benefits to lots of different levels of the sport. There are MAC teams that bring in guys either from the FCS or bring in guys who are former walk-ons at the Power 5 level or former backups at the Power 5 level. They go down to the MAC and boom, all of a sudden instant impact kind of players. But overall, the trend is the rich get richer with this, and that's, Ohio State is the rich in a lot of different ways.
Well, and you're losing Mitchell Melton, but there are people who believe he will be replaced with Damon Wilson, former 5-star 2023. Yes, I believe he's 2023.
Yes,
because he is a sophomore this year. So I think Ohio State's going to do what they do in the portal, and you're always going to be losing people as well.
Yeah, it is a constant state of flux, and again, until you see a bunch of different guys, it's not a concern. Mitchell Melton, I think, a little bit reminds me of Javonte Jean-Baptiste, where Javonte Jean-Baptiste played at Ohio State for 4 years and never really cracked regular playing time, and he goes to Notre Dame and turns into a pretty darn good player. Now he's playing the NFL, so this can be a very positive thing for players to get an opportunity to go to a place where they have more opportunities to be on the field, more opportunities to show what they can do, and maybe more opportunities to make some more NIL money just because they're a little higher on the pecking order there. We have another super chat we need to get to. Holy Moses, you guys are coming strong with the questions. We'll see how many of these we can get to. Mike Freno says, how's it going, guys? My confidence for the game is so high, it's coming back around and making me nervous because I feel like I'm missing something.
That's how it goes.
And that I think that's a pretty common thing right now for Ohio State folks. And, part of that is you just watched Ohio State play the most complete game they've played since like the 2014 Big Ten championship game. So that's part of it. But Texas also is, Texas is a very good team, but they're not an unbeatable team by any means. And, I heard it was one of the ESPN shows that was on in the media room. I was eating breakfast the other day, and it was, Ohio State coming in off, into this incredible performance in Texas. Well, they got a wake-up call against Arizona State. It was like, boy, is Texas got a wake-up call by having to go to double overtime against Arizona State? Like, is that supposed to make you feel better about them? Yeah. Is that like, oh, boy, watch out for Texas. They got a wake-up call. Like, it feels like there's not an obvious area where Texas has a huge advantage coming into this game.
I don't see it as a wake-up call. I see it as just, this is reality. These, I think all teams get exposed for their truths in these games. And we saw it last night with Notre Dame and Penn State with the inability of the quarterbacks to throw. It's hard to hide who you are in the playoffs. And I think you've seen that so far. And the strengths get accentuated and the weaknesses get exposed. And so when you look at the strengths and the weaknesses for Texas, I still think if Quinn Ewers does not have his game, like does Quinn Ewers need to play one of his 3 best games of the year to win this game? And would you expect him to do so?
Quinn Ewers might need to play his 1 best game of the year to win this game. And, that's you're by definition talking about an outlier performance, and you're talking about trying to do that against the, you're going to have your best game, and also it's going to come against the best defense you face. That just feels like those are 2 things that are not going to align all that often. You're parlaying 2, call it a 1 in 15 shot, that you're going to play your best game out of 15, and also you're going to do it against the best defense. So 1 in what is that, a plus 1,500, 2 plus 1,500 things, you're going to parlay them together, and that feels like that's not a super likely bet to hit. But
and that's where you need some help from Ohio State in terms of turnovers. Mm-hmm. You need Will Howard to make his 2 mistakes, but then you also need to capitalize on those mistakes. You can't, like, if Will Howard puts the ball on the ground and Ohio State recovers it, that might have been your 1 chance to get one of those. And if you drop an interception, that might have been your 2nd chance to get one of those 2 plays that Will Howard can sometimes give to an opponent. So if Ohio State's going to give Texas anything, Texas has to take advantage of it every time.
Yeah, and it's really trite to say that Texas needs to win the turnover battle, because that's one of those things that you could list that as the keys to the game in literally every game. But it feels like Texas needs to do what Oregon did the first time when they beat Ohio State, which is steal a possession on special teams, surprise onside kick, fake punt, something like that, steal a possession, get a turnover. Ohio State lost games where they turned the ball over deep in their own territory. They've lost twice this year. One of them was Derek Harmon stripped the ball out of Quinshon Judkins, and then boom, 2 plays later, Oregon gets a touchdown. Oregon also steals a possession with a surprise onside kick. The Michigan game, Ohio State turns the ball over and gives Michigan 2 plays where they had 1 turnover and 1 bad punt, and Michigan had two drives where they got a total of 5 yards, and that was 10 points because they turned the ball over and the interception got run back to the 3-yard line, and they scored a 3-yard touchdown drive, and then had a bad punt where Michigan kicked a long field goal on a 4-play, 2-yard drive. So you're going to have something like that for Texas to kind of continue to be able to have success. Super chat from Murphy Serafino. Penn stated last night, where does Franklin go from here? And have you guys given your score predictions for tonight yet? Thinking 34-17.
I put that game more on Drew Aller, but also you could see that coming. Like, you can't trust him to throw the ball in those situations.
You literally said, we're sitting in the room watching the game, and you literally said, what? It was, like, here comes the Drew Aller.
Yeah, because they'd gotten away with it twice. And so that was one where, yes, he would get a ton of criticism for just continuing to run or the ball out, then you go to overtime. But I understand wanting to show confidence in your quarterback and having confidence in your quarterback, and maybe you do, but he cost them that game last night with that interception. So I don't know. They had a nice little run, which we both thought, you run the ball first. Nick Singleton got a nice run. Yeah. And then you go from there and you throw it. But I think maybe the design needs to be better. The play needs to be better because with Drew Aller, and the longer it takes, like the first read is not there, they get a little dicey. And it just felt like this was inevitable. And you look at his numbers, and it's never outstanding. And I still don't understand all of the draft nicks in the past week saying, Drew Aller. It's like, you're lying.
Yeah,
and no, I don't want to be the kid, but that we'll see. Like one pass is like, wow, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
so I don't care about one pass.
Right.
I need to see 40 passes in a game.
Right. Yeah, that's how you get Joe Milton. It's like, well, he can throw football over them mountains. Okay, can he make the routine throws? Yeah. And I had a little bit of trouble grading Drew Aller because Drew Aller's wide receivers, I mean, literally were non-existent last night. 0 catches, 0 yards. So if you put Drew Aller on, his numbers probably look a lot better than they do at Penn State. But 12 for 23, 135 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick. And his completion percentage in the postseason against Oregon in the Big Ten championship game, 51.3%. Against SMU, 59.1%. Against Boise State, 52%. Against Notre Dame, 52%. Will Howard is out here putting up 80% completion percentages in like half of his games, and Drew Aller didn't crack 60 at any point in 4 postseason games. I think that's there's other elements there that factor into that, and the wide receiver talent or lack thereof is certainly part of it. But yeah, I'm going to need to see something that is not him getting bailed. The 2 best things that he did last night were throw terrible interceptions on plays where pass interference got called. And it was at least one of them was the pass interference was only like marginally relevant to the call. So yeah, I'm going to need to see it, and hopefully he has better wide receivers next year so you can actually figure out is it there or not. But
and they go into the portal and they still bring in receivers that aren't good enough. So
yeah,
boy, it's so puzzling to watch these playoffs and see the lack of receivers. We even talking about Texas. Matthew Golden is very good. Isaiah Bond has been banged up. Silas Bolden is up and down. Then you have Ohio State.
Yeah.
And
Texas, as you said, Matthew Golden is a dynamite receiver. His number 2, he is going to be Quinn Ewers' first read on a lot of plays. Hunter Helm, the tight end, number 85, is a fantastic receiver. He put up 700 and something yards receiving this year. He's someone to watch. All the other receivers are. You look at the game logs and it's like, oh wow, he had 120-yard receiving day, and then 0 catches in the next game or 2 catches in the next game for 28 yards, and there's not any consistency there.
I did see a PFF tweet about one of Notre Dame's corners and the great game he had, how he'd been targeted 4 times and gave up like 1 catch for 6 yards, and it's like, congratulations.
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't really mean anything to me against Penn State.
So super chat from Armageddon. says, I hope we continue to play with a chip on our shoulder and don't get overconfident or complacent, ready for this game. And this kind of transitions right into one of our listener questions or Twitter questions, which is from that JAC. Is Ryan Day doing anything to block out all the positive attention from the national media telling OSU how great they are? I know Saban was an expert at having his team not take the rat poison.
Yeah, I think one of the things that Ryan Day has been saying is like criticism and praise are the same thing. That's meaningless, from outside. So they've been ignoring all of that. And it is interesting, though, when talking with Steve Sarkisian yesterday, who said that players are still on Twitter. So, like, they know Texas is an underdog. Mm-hmm. Like, you don't talk about it, but you have access. All of the players have access to it. Like, so all of the players have access to the praise, just as they've had access to all of the ire and the angst. So they've learned well to block out the noise, because if they couldn't, then it would be all consuming based on how much noise there has been directed at them. So I think they're calloused towards that sort of thing. And they just, more than anybody else, they can just keep it inside the football facility, because that's how they've had to operate. One, since the Oregon loss. Two, since that Michigan loss. It's like you just put the walls up and ignore everything going on outside.
And I talked to Emeka Ibuka on the field after the Rose Bowl. This was part of our post-game show. I just kind of grabbed him one-on-one on the field for a minute and asked him about the offensive line. And this, I think, was one of the more telling things to me. I asked about the offensive line, and like, boy, there's been lots of shuffling and all that kind of stuff. And were you surprised at how well they played? I know you guys believe in your teammates, but were you surprised? And he talked about the fact that they don't pay any attention to what the expectation. They don't listen, because they know the media doesn't know what they're talking about. The fans don't know what they're talking about. They don't pay any attention to any of that. And I think that was a moment after they had just beaten the number one team in the nation by 20 points and really had beaten them worse than that. So that would have been a moment to be like really effusive with his praise. And that was where he went with the answer. That to me was kind of telling. And they're talking about, you're 2 games away from the national championship at this point. All these guys came back to win the national championship. Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, Lathan Ransom, Denzel Burke, Jordan Hancock, all these guys came back to win the national championship. Emeka Ibuka and Will Howard came to Ohio State to win the national championship. Caleb Downs came to Ohio State to win the national championship. So, I don't think it's like, all right, we got it. Like, you're not like, pulling up to the shores of D-Day, like, well, cross the channel, here we go. I think there's a certain amount of this that just becomes sort of self-motivating. And Ryan Day, this is one of these things where we hear Ryan Day say something and then we hear like 7 players say it. And it's like, so this has been a theme of the week, I hear. And it's, these guys are fighting to play another week with their teammates. And if, no one wants this to be over. We have been in the end of season locker room where the season ends a game before, these guys have been in that locker room too, where the season ends a game before everyone thinks it's going to. And that is a bad scene. That is not a good time in that locker room. And these guys know it, and these guys do not want to be sitting in that locker room. One of these teams could be sitting in that locker room tonight. They do not want to be there, and they know they do not want to be there. We are almost an hour in here. If you have not hit the thumbs up already, please do, and share this with folks on social media if you want to do that. Help on message boards, whatever. We'll try and get through your questions as well. We also do have to do a bold prediction show, so I promised this would be a supersized show.
Maybe at the bottom of the hour, we should switch over.
We'll switch over to bold predictions at the bottom of the hour, and then we'll kind of see how we're doing with time and all that. So
the last thing on this one I will say is that the proof has been in the pudding for these 2 postseason games. Why would you change how you've operated so far? Why start hearing the noise now? It's like, you know what they're saying out there is right, and then boom, now you've been harmed by it.
From at Anthony Molina 36, do you believe Ohio State will hold this momentum and aggressiveness through the next 2 games? I don't know why they're certainly going to try.
Yeah.
I think this is you're tweaking your game plan for every opponent, because every defense is a little different. Every offense is a little different. But, I think Jim Knowles likes what he has seen. I think Chip Kelly and Ryan Day like what they have seen. I think if you're doing what Ohio State's doing right now, make the opponent stop you, and then have a plan B. The Michigan game, we talked about the Michigan game earlier a little bit, and the fact that they were stuck so deep in their territory. if they get stuck deep in their territory tonight, if Texas is able to punt them down and have them come, in what they call coming out, like right real close to your own end zone, they were sort of limited in what they were doing in those coming out situations against Michigan. And that was one of the things that sort of defined that game and kept them from doing what they want to be able to do. They've not been in a whole lot of those situations. I'm sure after that Michigan game, they put together a robust coming out plan for those kinds of situations, and they really haven't had to use them. So we have to use the word overage again. Yes. So they have lots of stuff they haven't used. I think, if they get in a situation like that has caused them problems in the past, they are potentially set up, assuming that they have done the stuff that we're assuming that they've done, and I would guess that they would, they're set up to potentially be able to have more success in those situations as well.
Yeah, when you've got Chip Kelly, you've got Ryan Day and Carlos Loughlin's input in the running game, they've got a ton of good ideas for whatever Texas is going to throw at them with the zone. When you've got Emeka Egbuka, who can do anything, he's one of the smartest players in the country in terms of route running and finding the zones and getting down, and can also do stuff after the catch. And Carnell Tate is right behind him, and Jeremiah Smith is a freak of nature. Like, they're uniquely equipped to handle zone, man, whatever. And as long as Will Howard is as accurate as he has been, as you mentioned, 7 of their 14 games, he's completed over 80% of his passes. And that's the Ohio State record before this, I believe, was 4 in a season, in a career, actually, like 5 in a career maybe. Mm-hmm. And he's done this. And it's not just because of some dinks and dunks and some, checkdowns. Like, he's throwing the ball, he's dropping dimes, deep outs, down the middle. And if that continues to be the case, then, why would you not be aggressive? It is always interesting to see, like, the Tennessee game, when you're watching the way they're covering Jeremiah Smith. It's like, why only one guy on him? Like, why don't – and you're always kind of learning that. I don't expect it to be that kind of situation in this one. Like, I do expect safeties to be, as you mentioned, the cover 3 that they run with, where, you guys just all kind of drop back. But it is always interesting to see, like, okay, so where is the one weakness? Where is, if it's just one guy, who do you attack? Is it Muhammad has been one of the issues at corner? And then it's just a learning process. And then does Texas adjust? And then, boom, that opens that up. It's, and that's Chip Kelly and Ryan Day against the Texas defense.
All right. Here's one from at Mike Myers 614. Thanks, guys. Seems like the QB run could be sneaky important for both teams. If UT gets pressure early, think Chip will dial up some designer QB runs. And how long into the game before Sark lets Arch do his thing?
We had talked about Arch at some point, if things aren't going well for the Texas running game, getting him involved. I think that will happen. I think it almost has to happen. We keep expecting Will Howard to run, and he hasn't really needed to, because the running game has been operating without him. And now, if that's not happening, then maybe you do some of that. I'm interested to see, will they do some screens and things like that to kind of slow things down? But I don't know. How important do you think the quarterback run is going to be in this one? Because it feels like, to me, it's kind of it's gone into the background compared to the two previous games. Yeah,
and I wonder how much Will Howard taking that hit when he was running against Michigan and how that potentially impacted that game. I wonder how much that might play into Will Howard being a little bit less of a part of the run game now, because you get the sense that –
don't screw it up.
Yeah, well, you get the sense that they view a significant drop-off behind Will Howard. That there's Will Howard's up here and everyone else is, like, down there or lower. And why would you want to risk having Will Howard not be able to play in a potential national championship game, or in the second half of this game? If this game's close, you'd rather have Will Howard out there than Devin Brown or Julian Sayin. So I think that probably factors in a certain degree as well. But to your main point, they haven't needed it. And if they can continue to run, they've run that gap scheme real well with that offensive line, and they've run a bunch of counters, and they've had success in the run game without having to involve the quarterback. The threat of the quarterback run is there. I'm sure you're going to see it a little bit, but I no longer think you're going to see 15 Will Howard runs in a game. I think you might see 1 or 2 and just sort of rely on the threat of it to sort of balance the numbers without having to actually put him at risk.
Tom, do we want to do one more question here?
Oh, at least one, maybe more, he said, respectfully of the audience. at KA Folk says, your excellent math skills should help. What is the increased TD percentage on an attempted kickoff return versus a fair catch at the start of the 25 for OSU? And so the answer on that is OSU used to have a chart. This was like in Urban Meyer days. They had a chart up on the field, up on the wall, where it was, your starting field position is here. Here's the percentage chance of time you're going to score a touchdown. And if you're inside your own 10, it was like 6% or something like that. And it goes up, 5-10% every 10 yards you move down the field. But, the question is, okay, a kickoff return to where?
Yeah.
You're a kickoff return to the 20 versus a fair catch at the 25, or a kickoff return to the 30 versus a fair catch at the 25. That doesn't move the needle that much. You might move it a couple percent here and there, but that's not going to be a meaningful difference. If you run one back 60 yards and you start on the plus 35-yard line, sure, that's going to make a big difference. Then you're scoring 60% of your time instead of 20% of the time or 30% of the time. But how often has Ohio State done that? Not that often. So.
Yeah, no, Tom, I'll just give you some numbers. So Travion Henderson has 7 kickoff returns for 61 yards. So you're asking, what happens if they return 160 yards? Well, it takes them 7 attempts to get there. Yeah. Brandon Ennis is averaging 16 yards a return. Emeka Ibuka averaging 16 yards a return. So you know what? Just fair catch it, get the ball to 25 and go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. So
even if they fair catch it at like the 27, still just taking it to 25.
Yeah. Well, there's been a little bit of a circus on kickoffs. Like I know you're inside now and there's no wind and there's no anything, but kickoffs have been a little like, you remember the Jalen Marshall punt return experience where it was kind of like, oh, this is like a roller coaster. The kickoffs have kind of felt like that at times this year. So
a little hinky,
as they say. All right. So we're going to save the rest of these questions. We may come back to them a little later on, but we do want to get to our bold prediction. We sure do.
Tom, did you figure out did we tie with 4?
I think we tied last week. We both had the best week we've had like all season. I got the first 3 bold predictions I made against for the Rose Bowl. Mm. I got all 3 of them, and I thought, well, certainly I have beaten Tony. I haven't even gotten through, and I've already gotten 3. And then you also got 3.
Yes, correct.
Disappointingly. And for those who may be joining us who are like, what are they talking about? We do this competitively where we have to make predictions and when we say bold, we mean things that don't just happen every single week. This has to be something that's like out of the ordinary for Ohio State, but also out of the ordinary for something that might happen against Texas. So generally, if we get 1 of 7 or 2 of 7, it's like, what a remarkable week that was. In order to kind of, grade ourselves on a little bit of a curve, we also do give ourselves a freebie at the end of the show. I see we have 1 super chat. We're going to do this, and then the rest of the super chats we're going to wait until after bold predictions. So we're going to hit this real quickly. Holy Moses, you guys have put out a lot of questions. Mike Ferguson says, what do you trust more, Texas drivers in the snow or James Franklin's ability to win a game against a real top 10 opponent? Well,
you know what?
I didn't see a lot of Texas drivers in the snow yesterday, so I feel like I have to grade them inccomplete. So incomplete is better than F.
Yeah, so. I'm going to side with the Texas drivers because we will be on the roads here in a little while. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and all the positive support that I can and say I trust them. I also trust our bus driver with my life inherently, and so we will go from there.
Yes, I felt very good being on a very large coach bus yesterday because I'm like, physics is on our side here if there is any kind of an interaction between vehicles.
And until we're going on an overpass, I'm like, well, I don't feel great about this.
Bus versus car, I will take the bus. Bus versus bridge abutment. All right, so why don't you, Tony, since you tied, which is a pretty good result for you, why don't you go first?
All right, Tom. I mentioned earlier in the show that this is something that Texas is only allowed to happen once this year. I am predicting that Ohio State has a 50-yard completion. Now, I will tell you, Ohio State has 7 of those this year, which is one every other game. I'm already giving you that information, but Texas has only allowed it to happen once. So this thing has only ever happened once. Since Samuel Houston freed Texas from Mexico in 1832 has this happened, and it's Ohio State will have Texas will give up a 50-yard completion pass.
You pronounce his last name Houston. There's a street in New York named after him. You should really learn things, Tony. Come on. The fact that they've done this 7 times means that I feel like I need a little something here.
51 yards.
Well, I'm trying to decide if I want like 53 yards or if I want to take one player off of
Gosh.
Now,
you can't take the player.
I will not take Jeremiah Smith off.
I was saying G. Scott.
Okay, well, fine. Then I'll take Jeremiah Smith. That's fine. Agreed. Fantastic. Ohio State, one play of 50 yards or more through the air, but it can't be Jeremiah Smith. Agreed.
No.
No?
No, I need Jeremiah Smith.
Okay.
So you'll just take Emeka Egbuka.
Take Emeka Egbuka. Yeah.
I don't like that one either.
Good.
Could I just take Jeremiah Smith or Emeka Egbuka?
Yes. Which.
But the thing is, it could also be Travion Henderson. So
yes.
Just take Emeka Egbuka off the table.
Okay. All right. So I'll take Emeka Egbuka off the table. So 50-yard reception for Ohio State, excluding Emeka Egbuka.
Right. Correct.
So you had great success in the Oregon game.
Thank you.
By predicting Oregon to run for under 1.7 yards per carry in 2 quarters and under 3.4 yards per carry in a 3rd quarter. Tony, how much more bold am I going to go here? So much more bold. Texas will have 2 quarters with under 0.0 yards rushing. 2 quarters of negative yards rushing for Texas.
That's pretty bold, Tom. I'm surprised at you. I am surprised at you. The boldness. It only took you. Is this the 15th game of the season for you to actually be appropriately bold? So, I'm going to need 3 quarters. No, 2 quarters of negative yards rushing. I'll take that. That's pretty bold. But we're moving right along. Moving right along, Tom. In that vein, Ohio State will outrush Texas by this. Now I have to tweak this now.
I have a number in my head, and your number is going to be about 3, and my number is going to be about 5. So we
really.
Well, what is your number?
Well, I was initially 2.3, and then I was like, well, let's make it 3.4 yards per carry.
So okay. So so I've read the room pretty correctly.
So 3.4 yards per carry, Ohio State will outrush Texas by. And that's a lot.
It's a lot, but it's also if Texas is running for
Now, I will mention they outrushed Oregon by about 6.9 yards per carry. Because
is that more than 3.4?
But that's also because Oregon rushed for like 0.8 yards per carry.
So that would be like multiple quarters where they didn't rush for any yards at all.
So, but 3.4, I mean, you're talking, what's Ohio State going to rush for? 6 max?
Yes, but we've talked about sacks, and those do, of course, come off of rushing yards. How about 4? How about we do 4? Because believe me, I will take 4 if you don't.
Okay,
take 4.
all right, you can have that.
I can have 4. Okay, Ohio State outrushes Texas by 4 yards per carry.
You're really going all in on this Ohio State rush defense, which I don't think they're very good, frankly. That just means now I have to come up with something else.
Well,
I can manage.
Yeah, why don't you keep going through yours, and I'm going to have Tony some overage, so we can perhaps I can be generous and share one with you.
How about this one, Tom? We know Will Howard's career passing yardage game, 327 yards against Texas last year. I am predicting that he will do something he has never done ever before, ever. He will throw for 328 yards in this game. His 2 career highs will have come against Texas. 328 yards passing or more for Will Howard against Texas.
I thought you were going to just exactly 320 yards. But boy, I'll give you 2 points for that one. That would be
just 2 points. Wow.
Yeah, that's a very good one. You're picking him to do something he has not done before, and I think that's a very good one.
I also feel like that's very bold because I'm expecting more like 240 yards passing.
Yeah,
honestly,
I don't think I'm expecting that many that many passing yards for us. I think this is going to be a little lower scoring than people are thinking. So, all right, how about this one, Tony? Ohio State's 2nd highest wide receiver in yardage. So they have a guy who has 100 and whatever, and then their 2nd highest guy has 70 or 60 or whatever. Outgains Texas's 2nd, 3rd, and 4th highest wide receivers combined in yardage. So if Emeka Egbuka has 60 yards, and Texas's second, third, and fourth wide receivers have 30, 20, and 9, then that would be 60 to 59, and I would hit it.
See, boy, I don't think they really have a third or fourth receiver. Are you talking like pass catchers as a whole, or just wide receivers?
Wide receivers.
Yeah, I'm going to need a number. It needs to be more than by at least 17 yards. Ohio State's second receiver outpaces the second, third, and fourth wide receivers for Texas by 17 yards.
How about the second and third receivers for Texas by 17 yards?
Second and third by 34. Which do you want?
17.
All right, there you go.
He said through gritted teeth.
Hey, we're working well. We're going quickly through these. Second, third, and fourth receivers by 17 yards. Because, Tom, who even is Texas's fourth wide receiver in terms of getting yardage? Because we know Bond and Golden and Bolden, but you really don't see too much of a fourth guy getting involved. So, all right, okay. Where can I go now? I can go with this one, Tom. Something that has not happened since last season. It's not happened at all this season. In fact, Travion Henderson will rush for 100 yards in a game. And now this is something I had for 2 points last week, but we had to tweak the number up. So I'm not tweaking any number. I'm keeping it for 1 point, 100 yards rushing. Now, we did just see Texas give up 140-some yards rushing to Cam Scatterman, but that dude
he runs the ball on every play. And
right.
Ohio State splits their carries. So, yeah, I think.
Plus, I think he's also a little crazy.
Yeah, well, there's a little of that. I think I'm going to have to allow this one because Ohio State splits their carries. I don't think they'd be able to run the ball a ton. You're really relying probably on at least one big long run. You're probably looking at you need a 60-yarder kind of thing to get that because he had, a 66-yarder on the Rose Bowl and still didn't get to 100.
And the thing that kicked me in the gut there is they also had a little jet sweep toss, which would have put him over 100.
Yes.
But it was a pass.
Yes. No. All right. So, Tony, do you know what Carnell Tate's production has been in the entire college football playoffs?
I believe he has 2 catches.
He does.
For about 36 yards.
28 yards, Tony. So that's why it will probably surprise you to learn that he's going to double each of those numbers in this one individual game. 2 catches and 28 yards total for the first 2 playoff games, 4 catches, 56 yards or more in this game.
I like that one. And really, that's the kind of bold that feels like it very well could happen with the amount of attention being placed on Jeremiah Smith. Somebody has to be a little bit freed up, and we know Carnell Tate is very, very capable of doing that. So I like that one. Good for you, Tom. It's a feel-good story. It's surprising from you. You're a very, just angry person. So to put some light out there into the world is nice of you. I appreciate that. While we're keeping things positive, Tom, how about this one? So Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau in their 2 playoff games have combined for 7.5 sacks. It's a lot. I am saying that in this game alone, those 2 Ohio State defensive ends will combine for less than 1 total sack.
I thought this was going to go 7 sacks between them. So now I'm really kind of thrown.
Yes, you discombobulated.
Yes.
This is how the Ohio State defensive line is going to try to approach this game. You are Quinn Ewers, and you're like, well, now I have hesitated, and boom, this bold prediction has sacked you. Half sacked you.
Can I add Kenyatta Jackson to that?
Why? But why would you do that?
To make it less likely for that you get it. That's why.
Look, 1 sack, 1 full sack by either of those guys ends this. 1 half sack by both of those guys ends this. These 2 guys combining on the same sack ends this. They have not been stopped this season. A grounding call ends this.
the entire season, there's never been a game where they didn't either combine for one.
Not in the playoffs. No, Michigan.
So by season you mean
Michigan? They did not.
Oh, so it's been 3 games. So by entire season you mean 2
So
games.
okay, if you want to do this, if you add in Kenyatta Jackson, I need to take it to they combined for no more than 1 sack.
Yes, I'm going to do that.
All right.
All right, so there you go.
And I still have one more 1-pointer to
Yes,
go.
you do. So I have oh boy. See, I just realized I didn't put together a 3-pointer, so I'm going to have to do that on the fly. So let me keep this one simple. Say Caleb Downs gets an interception.
All right. Well, okay. I guess I can't argue with that one, but that is interesting. I have one that involves my 3-pointer that we'll get to. So you went with that one. How about I'll do this? Who should I have an interception? Maybe. No. I'm not going to do that. My next 1-pointer, my final 1-pointer is. Let's see. The interception is always very easy. And Caleb Downs is very, very due. Granted, he just had an interception 2 games ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an easy one to say. But let's do a Jeremiah Smith one. Jeremiah Smith has at least 2 catches between 17 and 34 yards.
That feels like almost guaranteed to hit,
Is it?
doesn't it?
I don't know. How many does he? I mean,
a lot.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's talk it out. Let's explore the room.
I think well, if you want to raise the number for that would be fine. If you want to, I thought for sure this was going to picking a specific number of touchdown receptions.
Well,
other
I
than
mean,
one.
I don't think he's going to score in this game.
Well,
how about that?
Yeah.
Jeremiah Smith does not score in this game.
There you go.
Well, you seem like pretty convinced he's going to score in this game.
Well, I've watched a lot of Ohio State football this year, so that has me, he has more games of 2 touchdowns than he has 0 touchdowns. So that therefore, which is ludicrous to say, a true freshman will not score a touchdown in a game, and that's unquestionably bold. But yes,
but that is not the first time this has been a bold prediction.
Yeah, no.
This is maybe the 6th game or so. I think you went to it.
Yeah. Okay, so Tony, if I told you that something has not happened this entire season, I went back and went through box score after box score. Something has not happened this entire season against the Ohio State defense.
All right.
You would certainly say hey, this would be
what
a bold thing to predict, and then to also predict a specific player to score a touchdown, that also would be a bold thing. Okay. So, Tony, when I tell you that Ohio State has not given up a passing touchdown to a tight end all season long, would you believe me? Because otherwise, you're going to have to take 10 minutes to go through all the box scores, and then you'll believe me.
That's very good. Okay, now go on.
So when I tell you that Texas tight end Gunnar Helm is going to do something that has not been done since the Truman administration against the 2024 Ohio State, 2024-2025 Ohio State defense, spanning 2 years, 2 calendar years. 2024, 2025, 2 calendar years. Those are 2 calendar years. 2 points, Tony.
2 points for Gunnar Helm to score a touchdown. How many touchdown catches does he have this year? 7?
7, I think.
So I did a 1 point for something that Ohio State has done 7 times, but Texas has only allowed once.
So this is Ohio State has allowed nonce, so therefore 2 points.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you all of the tight ends other than Gunnar Helm. How do you feel about that?
Not tremendous.
Not tremendous.
No. Is Kenyon Sadiq on this team now? No.
It cannot be within 17 yards. It has to be more than 17 yards. It cannot be greater than 34 yards.
How about can't be between 17 and 34 yards?
Oh, I don't like that one. Because it feels like it's going to be a red zone, inside the 10 type of thing. How about outside the 10? It has to be outside the 10. I know it has. There's no canon number in there.
Outside the 7.
All right. I don't care for this at all. But they've done very well. I mean, Tyler Warren didn't score. Colston Loveland was hurt. This one. I feel like you researched it, so you deserve 1 point for that alone,
and then 1 point for the boldness.
Right.
So
I agreed. This is just respect I respect the game, Tom. I hate the player. I respect the game.
I was when you started saying I respect, I'm like, where is this going?
So, my 2-pointer. Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State wide receiver, needs 8 catches and 146 yards to set the Ohio State school records in both receptions and receiving yards. I'm saying he's going to get there.
Wow. So, gets both. At least 8 catches, at least 146.
Yes.
Yep. Great. Okay. That's a good one. That's a great one. And entirely possible. Because as you said earlier, I think they are going to be looking. I mean, Janae Barra in the corner is Thorpe Award winner for Texas. I know they play zone, and I think you're going to see him on Jeremiah Smith or in the vicinity of Jeremiah Smith more often than would be statistically likely just by random chance. So I think that is going to open some stuff up for some other receivers, especially Emeka Egbuka, because you mentioned Malik Muhammad earlier, number 5, the other corner, that there may be some opportunities there. So, and they move these guys around enough where, sometimes they're in the slot, sometimes they're outside. So you're going to create some advantageous matchups. So yes, I like that one a lot. Good. All right. 3 points. So I'm trying to come up with a combination of turnovers or, this guy has an interception and this guy has, how about this? How about I fade you and I say JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer combined for at least 3 sacks and have a turnover, not just force a fumble, recover a fumble, or have an interception. Those 2 guys, 3 sacks plus recover or intercept a ball.
Okay. They have to hand the ball to the ref, basically. Can't just force it and somebody recover. Now, okay. However, Tom, now let me finish. If one of them forces it and the other recovers it, that does not count.
Oh, man.
You have to accept that.
I do have to accept that. And I have to accept that just because of how funny it would be.
Respect the game.
For me to think, look at me, I just got 3 points. And then it's like, wait a minute.
So, okay. At least 3 sacks and a turnover. Even though they are basically averaging 3 sacks, but not necessarily averaging the turnover. So, I mean, this is basically you're saying one of them is going to cause a turnover, which is normally just a 1 point.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like this is a little bit being lenient here for this isn't necessarily bold on the sacks because, again, they're averaging they've had 4 sacks in one and 3.5 in the other. So 3 sacks in this one is no big deal. However, expecting more than that, it's like, you're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. The key here is getting that turnover, which is not always easy for a defensive end. So I'm just going to let it play. Mm-hmm. We'll go with it. And
we are almost done in case people are wondering. We're almost done, and then we'll go back to answering some more questions.
Right. And my last 3-pointer, my lone 3-pointer, I call it, Tom, the Trace Late Chase. And it's involving the Ohio State 3 safeties. They will combine for an interception, a forced fumble, and a tackle for loss.
I think because of the forced fumble, I have to allow this. Because the tackle for loss, it feels like that's just kind of like, oh, they're going to play in the game. Good for them. Mm-hmm. The interception, okay. The forced fumble feels like that's the area where this is most likely to not hit.
Would you like to know how many forced fumbles the Ohio State safeties have this year?
I would love to know.
Yeah, I bet you would. All right, what's your freebie? No, I will tell you. Lathan Ransom has 3. Jordan Hancock has 2. Mm-hmm. Caleb Downs, none.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I feel like the combination of those things, I probably need to allow it. So, yep. All right. So now we have to give you your freebie.
Yep.
Travion,
have you put no thought into this?
No, I've put a ton of thought of it. That's why I'm reading it off of the phone right now when I say Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins has a rush of at least 3 yards in this game.
Okay, I will take that one. And the freebie for you, Quinn Ewers gets pressured and throws an incompletion. We'll see if that happens. Right, so there you go, bold predictions. Right. Thank you all for tolerating that. Thank you for tolerating Tom.
All right, so let's run back through some of these questions. And then we do have to wrap up at some point because
Try to grab some lunch.
Eat some lunch, and then we have a football game to go cover. So, let me pull up the full screen one here. Nope. Nope, that's the same one. Okay, so there was not a name on this one. That's what was throwing me off. On defense, on 3rd and 1 and 4th and short, Ohio State fails about 85% of the time. Why not put in a special package of 5 DTs in this down and distance? Give them something different to plan for. I think this is looking at it a little different. I don't know what the exact stats are, but the opposing, the Ohio State defense failing 85% of the time means they're succeeding 15% of the time in stopping a 3rd and 1 play. I don't know what the expected success rate of stopping an end 1 play would be, but it feels like 15% is not like, that's not like a statistically anomalously bad number. That feels like it's probably fine. Why not put in a special package of 5 DTs on this down and distance? Because then you're getting like way out of your base personnel. And I don't know that they feel like they've got 5 DTs who they feel great about to put in there. Well,
and it just depends on the where you are in the field. They'll put in a bunch of defensive linemen on the goal line because there's nowhere to go, but you're not going to do that at the 40-yard line because that could lead to an even bigger play. So, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, you give up 1 yard. The opponent still has 50 yards to go. So, you can make it back up. And it's not necessarily just about that one play. And, again, it's tough to stop somebody on 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1.
And then this was the last one that we had saved from before. We have finally gotten through those questions. From El Basseni, why doesn't Ryan Day use 2 punt returners like when Ginn and Holmes were back there? It allows the up back to catch the short ones from rolling and allows the short guy to pick the punt returner who should be focusing on the ball in the air instead of whether he's going to get hit or not.
I mean, that's just a preference. I always like that one because you've had 2 dynamic punt returners back there and either guy could do it, but you don't have Santonio Holmes or Ted Ginn. So, this one, it's just a preference for what the coaches want. And if you have 2 guys back there, that's one less guy to have blocking or, more involved in protection. So I don't say one is better than the other. I say if you have Santonio Holmes and Ted Ginn, use them, but Ohio State doesn't.
No, they don't. And you're changing the numbers in terms of fake punts and that kind of stuff. You're taking another guy out of the box there. So I'm scrolling through the comments, and this is from more than an hour ago, so I don't remember when this happened. But Jeff Frazier says, Tony Senior cracked your neck there. I think thought you were doing a senior picture of this, which now I've got to go back and find that on the feed. So some just different kind of notes. Wheels and Lover says, in case you missed it, Texas safeties are rated higher on PFF, and I did see that. I did see that. I mean, Taff and Makubu are very good safeties. They Makubu is a big hitter. Taff makes big plays in both directions sometimes. I mean, we've seen him have huge plays. We've seen him have huge plays happen against him. I think if it's me, just having watched 3 Texas games, I haven't watched all 12, but just having watched 3, give me Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs. But this is at least a conversation, and it's like, I can see that you could make that argument.
Yeah, I like those 2 guys. I still have the same question I've had since watching them is, what are they in pass defense? Because against at least an elite pass defense, Makubu, he is a big hitter, as you said. He comes crashing down, but they have to because they play far back at times. I like them. I just don't know what they are against an elite passing offense, and maybe we'll see what they are tonight.
Yeah. I have found the Texas fan in the feed. Last time I checked, Will Howard was 0-4 against Texas. Is he coming on the Kansas State bus tonight, or is he coming on the Ohio State bus tonight?
No, he will be with the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Will Howard is also well aware that he's never beaten Texas.
Mitchell says, worried about the defense playing soft zone and letting them march down the field like Oregon did in the 3rd and 4th quarter. They only marched down the field in the 3rd and 4th quarter because it was 41-15. So if Ohio State's up 41-15 and Texas is marching up and down the field, you're probably going to be fine with it. That's not going to be the game plan. That's not going to be
if that's your biggest worry, then you're going to have a good time in this game.
Well, if that remains your biggest worry throughout the course of the game, how about that? Jahdae Barron is going to make you goobers realize Jeremiah Smith is a Megatron. Who is the best wide receiver Jahdae Barron has paced all season long?
Yeah, exactly. Like who? Because there are really no big names in the SEC, and they've not really played. Tom, name a Arkansas wide receiver right now.
Did they put Darren McFadden out wide sometimes?
Matt Jones?
Matt Jones,
See,
yes.
that's all we can do for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Peyton Hillis, I'm sure, split out wide at some point. Mika wants to know, does Ohio State land Damon Wilson and Connor Moore? So Damon Wilson, the Georgia defensive end, he's visiting Ohio State this weekend. That one feels like a more likely than not to me, if not a yes to me.
Right.
Connor Moore is the tackle from Montana State who is an Ohio native. I mean, that's not as sure a thing to me, but I think, if they want him, they can probably get him.
Right.
It's just they've already brought in 2 tackles this class. They brought in and
I think there's some talk about maybe guard for him.
Guard for him. Okay, so I think more probably both of those are more likely yes than no to me. I haven't seen anyone ask about Carson Beck, but just the answer to that is no. Why would Ohio State bring in Carson Beck? They don't want to turn the ball over. They want to throw the ball to the people wearing their same jersey colors. So no. Boy, there are a lot of comments in here.
And I don't know that Ohio State necessarily needs any more guards, frankly.
Yeah, but I think you also this year have seen you never have too many.
Yeah.
There's
especially if you got one that can play tackle.
Yeah. Having, there's also the possibility we'll see is Philip Daniels ready to play right tackle. He was a true freshman this year, and redshirt freshman this year. But that's a process to get to the point where you're ready to play at the Ohio State level, and so that's having another guy who can play tackle on the roster. That's not actually a problem. So. Mr. Bucknuts says Texas defense is real nasty. That's my concern. Yeah, no question. Texas. This is a very good defense, but
fast defense, hard hitting, downhill. Anthony Hill. Ohio State's going to have to buckle the chin straps in this one because I don't think anybody has hit them like Texas will hit them. But Texas also needs to tackle and cover, and Ohio State's been doing very, very good job on scheming things up, and a lot of the talk is about what Steve Sarkisian does with scheming, and rightfully so. Ohio State's ability to scheme throughout all 4 quarters has been on display in the playoffs so far.
Bobby Mack says, I bet Texas gets called 3 times for holding with as much talk as there has been this week. Welcome to the bold prediction show.
That's a 3-pointer right there.
That would be a 3-pointer.
Do you think an offensive lineman gets called for holding in this one? Because, boy, watching Abdul Carter get held, and I don't know that he was – if there was ever a call against Penn State in this one, it's like there is just this from on high, look, just let it go. We're not going to call him. And so we could call it every time. It's like, well, you don't have to call it every time. Just call it enough to get it to stop.
Wingman Ted says, who scores more points, Quinn Ewers or Jaden Fielding, including extra points? And in this scenario, he gets 6 for a passing touchdown. So I think I'm going to go with Quinn Ewers just because you get 6 for a passing touchdown. Ohio State, I'm not expecting Ohio State to kick 6 PATs. So then, okay, you're going to kick a field goal and 3 touchdowns, and so.
I think Fielding tops out at 6.
Yeah, I think
with
Fielding
a field goal and 3 extra points, maybe.
Yeah, 24. I mean, I think I picked him to score 28.
Right.
Yeah, we both picked him to score 28. Yeah, so that 31. Sure, he gets to 7. That's the Fielding probably has to get to 7 for this to be a serious question. So, Wheels and Lever says Texas wins 35-17 tonight. If you want to give anyone plus 17.5, I'm sure everyone in the comments would love to take that action. Too Legit to Quit says Ohio State has great talent, and finally the coaching staff is letting them play to their potential.
Yeah, I mean, they've schemed. They've gotten better scheming after the Oregon game defensively, after the Michigan game offensively. And I know the players themselves are enjoying the defense and the offense that they're playing in right now more than maybe they did previously. So I guess I wouldn't disagree with that.
Yeah. It feels like there's always one fan of the opposing team who's posting 10,000 things in there. There was something in there about until Texas comes up to Ohio to recruit, Ohio State fans can't talk to football about Texas fans. Odysseus says, bold prediction, Tom will get into a slap fight on the sidelines with Matthew McConaughey. Probably not. I think that's at least a 3-pointer, maybe more. I don't.
Tom, this is your opportunity to actually influence the results of the bold prediction. Normally, we just have to allow the players to do so. Mm-hmm. This would be your opportunity.
Yeah.
And then after you do that, you'd be like, it's not all right, is it, Matt?
He seems like a pretty chill guy. I can't imagine he gets into that many. And I don't find myself in all that many physical altercations either. So that feels statistically
which is strange for a photographer down on the sideline because it's a zoo.
There's times I'm tempted. But,
yes.
Bobblehead Guru says, if I'm Texas, I watch Michigan games, talk with Wink Martindale, and watch how the Lions beat Justin Jefferson with 2 backup defensive backs. You're not going. Here's the thing. I saw the idea that Wink Martindale was spotted. Like, whatever, fine. Even if that is true, which I don't really think it was, Texas is not overhauling its entire defense in the span of a week. This is not, you don't have a month to do this. You have a week, and you've got to, you're going to install a whole new defense, and you're going to mix up your coverages. Like, that doesn't make sense based on the timetable we're talking about.
You would still need the perfect storm that occurred for Michigan to win that game.
Yeah.
And Alex Orji is not walking through that door.
I'm just looking through. I had some people. Tom keeps getting older, while Matthew McConaughey stays the same age. That is true. That is, yeah. You know what? It is true. I looked at my picture on my media pass, and it's just the same one I've used since like 2017. I'm like, boy, that guy looks much younger than I do. How about that? All right, we have gotten to the end of the questions, or the end of the comments. So do we want to do score predictions? And
Yeah. Let's do that. Tom, I'll give my score prediction first. That way it seems original.
Mine was 28-17 Ohio State. How about you, Tony?
Mine was first. I set mine in first, and it was 28-17 Ohio State. I don't usually go like just straight touchdowns. I usually like to throw in a field goal or something there, but going 28-17, I feel decent about it, I guess. 17 seems about right based on what we've seen from this Texas offense and mainly this Ohio State defense. 28 points for Ohio State, I think, gives proper credence and credit to the Texas defense as well.
Yeah, Ohio State put up 42 points in the first round of the playoffs and 41 points in the second. So 28 that's a substantial. That's a pretty good day for the Texas defense. I struggle to see Texas scoring more than 20 points without getting, you get a pick six, you get a kickoff return for a touchdown. Sure, I'm not making a game prediction based on, if they return a kickoff for a touchdown. And they just did against Arizona State. But it feels like Texas either needs to completely lock down the Ohio State offense and hold them to 13, 17 points, or they need to get a defensive or special team score, or have, you get an interception and run it back to the 3-yard line, and you have a 3-yard touchdown drive. I'm crediting that to the defense.
Yeah,
so,
all things being equal,
28-17. Something that feels. That feels about right. I was very disappointed to see that you picked the exact same score as me. That always makes me.
No. I sent in my score first. And then you sent in your score.
Yes, without looking at yours.
Right, but don't say I picked the same score as you. We came to the same score in different ways, different times.
Yeah.
I could not see yours into the future because, again, I put mine in first.
Anyway, so we are going to be headed over to the stadium in just a few hours. The bus leaves here at 3:00 Eastern time. So we have to go grab some lunch and go get our stuff packed up and ready to go. We will be over at the stadium. We'll have a bunch of pregame coverage for you over at the stadium. I'll try and get some behind-the-scenes stuff when we first get there because I know people love that stuff, just sort of looking around the insides of the stadium and walking around the field.
It's fancy.
The whole place. Yeah, it's a fancy place if you haven't been there before. So we'll get a bunch of that stuff, throw that up on our YouTube channel. And TK says, Tony, 20-minute Smashburger Challenge Fund. Listen, we have a sponsor now.
Yes. Grateful Griddle.
Our sponsor is Grateful Griddle. Plug them one more time. They're here to take your events to the next level, whether it's a wedding, corporate event, or birthday party. Their Columbus food truck catering serves up mouth-watering smash burgers, customizable menus, and unbeatable service. Head to Grateful Griddle OH and let them handle the flavor while you handle the fun. Tony, we will be handling the fun over at the stadium. So we'll have our pregame coverage there, all on the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you are you might want to just kind of like leave it up in a tab because we've had people talk about not getting notifications. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell a couple times so you make sure it's like newly at the top of your algorithm.
Did you mention there is no availability report for the CFP?
I did not mention that, but yeah, that is a great point. Yeah, no, the CFP does not require an availability report, so there is no availability report. There was no Pepsi in medieval times, so there is no Pepsi at medieval times. We will have, we're not expecting any major bombshell. Will Howard's not playing. There's nothing like that we're aware of. So I think people are going to hear that and freak out that Ohio State's hiding something. Yeah. I think it's just, we don't have to, so we're not gonna. So, yeah. All right, and
I did see somebody at Jeff Frazier asking if we'll be on after.
Yes, for sure. Yes,
definitely.
Yes, we will have our usual post game show following the game. Have interviews with players and coaches. We got to figure out. Sometimes they let us stream the interviews live. Sometimes they don't. We got to figure out the whole situation there. This is one of the reasons we show up at the stadium 4 hours before the game.
Then we have to find a hole to go and do the post game Buckeye Weekly from, and it's always an adventure. But we will definitely be live after the game. So. I think that will do it. If you have not yet hit the thumbs up, we would appreciate you doing so. And, of course, as Tom said, hit the bell to be notified. Subscribe to the channel if you've not yet done so. I'm sure you have by now. And, of course, continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. $4.99 for your first month. Find us there at the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus, where we will be talking about this one after the game for a while and then whatever else is to come following that. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.